Hi, I'm David Smith from SmithDavidson Gallery in Amsterdam. I'm here at the Unit Gallery in London, where we opened the exhibition Tjukurrpa, The Dreaming, just 2 days ago. To celebrate Emily Kangwari's work, who opened an exhibition at the Tate Modern, we decided to do a beautiful exhibition in London, and in collaboration with the Unit Gallery in London, we were able to put together a most wonderful exhibition, which is going to be on view for the next month. Now, within this exhibition, besides showing works from Emily Kangwari, we wanted to give the viewer an overview of the whole art movements in Australia. Where did this art movement come from? Where did it start? So we decided to do an exhibition which involved all decades leading up to Emily's work and also after Emily passed away. In the beginning, it all started in a place called Papunya. Now, Papunya was a village, if you will, or really a camp 200 miles away from Alice Springs in the desert. And in that camp, a group of Aboriginal people, Pintupi people, were placed by the Australian government because they were taken from the lands, and the lands were taken to use for mining, etc. You can find lots of information about this. Many documentaries have been made about this. Now, in this village, there was a teacher sent from Sydney called Geoffrey Bardon, and he was meant to teach the kids in that camp arts and crafts. But he saw the kids playing outside and making these intricate drawings in the sand, if you will, and he found it intriguing. So he decided to give the kids some papers and pencils to start working these drawings in the classroom. What they painted cowboys and stockmen, you call them in Australia. He said, no, I want you to paint these images. And he said, well, we're not really allowed to paint these images because it's really from the ancestors, and it's really only the initiated elders in our tribe that can paint these images. So knowing that, Geoffrey Bardon befriended the elder men in this camp and was able to get them to start painting these images that stem from ceremony on permanent holders, on boards. And I have one board here to show you, which is a board painted by an artist called Johnny Warankula. Now, Johnny Warankula was an older man living at Papunya. And what you have to realize, the Aboriginal people in Australia is the longest living linear culture on the planet. Their culture goes back maybe 50,000 years. But within all this time, they never created a written language. So all information given from generation into generation was given through ceremonies. And these ceremonies were done in the desert, where they would clear a part of the desert, create imageries from ochres, from plants, create, if you will, an installation, paint their bodies, and then they would sing the story of creation. And within this ceremony, they would tell the story of creation, which, according to the Aboriginal people in Australia, in the beginning of time, spiritual beings came from the earth and created everything. So every river, every rock formation, every plant was created by these Tingari beings, and when they were finished creating everything, they returned back in the earth, and during the ceremonies, they would walk in the footsteps of these Tingaris. Now, in this painting, Johnny Warankula painted we don't know what he painted, but thankfully, Geoffrey Bardon, on the back of the painting, wrote down what Johnny painted. And it says here, it says the name, Johnny Warankula, and here it says snake going WA, Western Australia, and here it says rain, and here it says bush tucker after rain. Now, in a nutshell, what he is saying is that bush tucker is all the fruits and vegetables that you can eat in the desert. It's under one name. And it says snake going Western Australia, creating rain. Now, with snake, what is meant, of course, Geoffrey Bardon didn't speak Pintupi, which was the language of Johnny Warankula. He had a translator to explain this to him. So Johnny Warankula probably said in Pintupi something like a snake. Now, the most famous dreaming about a snake is the rainbow serpent. And the rainbow serpent is a spiritual being that created all the water and created all the rain. So what he's saying is, this is the imagery of the rainbow serpent creating rain, so that the forest, or not the forest, so that the desert starts blooming and the bush tucker starts to grow for you to eat. And that is the dreaming painted here. Now, in a ceremony, this would be flat on the ground. So this is what it would look like. So all paintings from the indigenous artist is always the world seen from above. It's always a bird's eye view. Even though we hang it on the wall, show it like this or like this, and really what you're looking at is flat. And that's with every painting in our exhibition. Everything is a bird's eye view. And that's how the whole art movement started. Within a few years, it became quite popular, and it moved to different areas of the country. And one place it moved to was the Kimberley, which is the northwest of the country. And in that place, there was an artist called Rover Thomas, who was a guide and a stockman going along the Canning stock route, a very long stock route in Western Australia. And he painted based on the same stories of these Tingari spiritual beings creating the land. He painted in the same stories but completely with different visuals. There's a beautiful painting behind you by Rover Thomas. As you can see, the imagery is completely different. It's completely abstract, but it's the same history as was with Johnny Warankula. So, as said, Rover started painting in the 80s, in the early 80s, but he was already quite an old man. As are most of these artists, when they started painting, they were often in their late 60s, 70s, even 80s. And here is another example of an amazing painting by Rover Thomas, which is completely abstract. And it is an impression of the country where he is from the lands where he is from. So every painting painted by the indigenous people is always the world seen from above. So you're looking in a bird's eye view. There's no top or bottom to this painting because you're looking from above to the landscape. And the imagery can be either tracks or mountains or rock formations. It's not a map like we know in the West. It's a map meant something to the indigenous people in Australia. They would know exactly where this is. But for us, it is almost like different visuals that we're not used to seeing. It's completely spiritual for the Aboriginal people. So the meaning has multi-layers. It's literally the time that this land was created when they tell you the story, but at the same time, it's a time when they are having the ceremonies, the now. So both are taken into these paintings and into the stories that they are trying to say in these paintings. So let's start with Emily Kingwari and her story, because Emily comes from a completely different area again. So from the Kimberley, from the northwest, Emily started painting in a place called Utopia. Now in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, Emily and a group of women in Utopia, which was a cattle station 200 miles west of Alice Springs, started making batiks, and making artworks on silk. Beautiful works, by the way, and some are seen at the Tate Modern Exhibition. I've got some beautiful examples there. We sadly don't have one here, but we started with the canvas paintings that she started painting. So she started making batiks with a group of women, but because of the success of the painting in the Western Desert and also in the Kimberley, there was an arts person in Utopia who thought, let's give these ladies canvases. So they supplied 100 canvases to the ladies in Utopia, which they all started painting on canvas for the first time in 1988. And very soon people noticed that Emily had a rare talent and an imagery which is completely unique. And she quickly after that was picked up by a couple, Donald Holt and Janet Holt, in Delmore Downs Station, and she started painting there in 1989. So the first series of painting that she ever did, basically most of them come from that station. And we have a beautiful example of one of the works, which is right here, which is a painting that was painted in 1989 at Delmore Downs. And it's an emu dreaming, yam dreaming, which means the emu, of course, is a very important animal for Emily and for their life in the desert. And the yam dreaming is the roots that you see underneath. So the yam was a very important vegetable, and they would have to find them under the earth. And the yam roots you can see here, and the emu tracks you can see here. So it's really the story of the emu going from breeding ground to breeding ground, and also looking for food within the desert, with at the same time were the two most important food resources for Emily and her people. So if she would tell you the story of this painting, it would be her country and also the food supplies that they were looking for, but also created by their spiritual ancestors, which is always a big part of their paintings. So this was painted in December 1989, and she started painting at Delmore, I believe, in May of 1989. Now after that, Emily started experimenting with different techniques because, of course, the brushes and everything was new, and the colors was all new for her. So she started painting in different ways, and there's a beautiful example on this wall where you can see Emily experimenting with the brush, pushing the brush, painting with the brush, all different techniques to see what the color does and what the brushes do. And that's the amazing thing about Emily. In the 7 years that she painted, she basically had about 5 distinct different styles of painting. which any modern painter would be jealous of having 5 distinct different styles within a lifespan. She did it in 7 years. And in these 7 years, it's thought she painted about 3,500 paintings, of which about half were painted for Delmore Down Station, and the other half for different studios in the desert as well. Now, after she started experimenting, she had a few very famous series, and one of the series that she was very known for, which she started painting in 94, 95, are the Wild Yam Dreamings, when she suddenly started painting the roots of this wild yam, and even in a very simple color tone. So she left the color tones behind and just did a black and white yam dreaming. So these are just the roots of the wild yam in the earth seen from above. But for Emily, this is deeply spiritual, because that is her livelihood, that's her life, that's her spiritual ancestors creating this for everybody to live from. Now this is one of the most important paintings we have in the exhibition, and there's another one famous, maybe one of the most famous paintings by Emily, which is in the National Gallery of Victoria in Australia, which is also a black and white yam dreaming, which is even larger than this one, which is almost 8 meters wide. Now, besides this, at the end of her life, Emily did a few other things, but one of the most unique paintings in the exhibition is the last series by Emily. So something very special happened to Emily Kingwarry. 2 weeks before she passed away, she painted a series of 24 paintings called The Last Series. And these paintings showed a complete new way of painting for Emily. Not an ending, but a new beginning, if you can say something like that. Now, we are the only ones in London this week showing one of her last series paintings. They're very special. There's none in the Tate, but there's one here at the Unit Gallery. So these paintings were painted with a thicker brush, with bright colors and all different color schemes. This one is red and white, but other ones are with magenta and greens and all kinds of colors, but transparent with a dark background and giving you the feeling of a completely new artist. It was such a shame that she passed away 2 weeks later, because everybody would be amazed with what you've done in the future. So this is the final series of Emily. But after Emily passed away, the art movement grew on and more artists became famous. And we have, after Emily, we have a couple of other artists we'd like to show you in the exhibition. One of the artists is Paddy Bedford. Paddy Bedford is really also from the Kimberley, very same imagery as Rover Thomas, which we showed earlier. And Paddy Bedford, like most of these artists, started painting at a very old age, in his late 70s. And his imagery is completely abstract, like Rover Thomas. And he became, with the few years that he only painted, one of the most leading artists in Australia. Even so famous that they painted one of Qantas airplanes with a beautiful painting by Paddy Bedford. Now, Paddy Bedford started painting in the late 90s, as did Makinti Napananka. And Makinti Napananka, again, is from the Western Desert. So her imagery was, again, more with dots and lines and beautiful colors. And she was really a continuation of the paintings we saw in the beginning by artists such as Johnny Warren Kula, Mick Namarari. And we have 2 beautiful examples in this exhibition. And another artist I really would like to show is artist called Tommy Watson, who is a completely unique character because he painted in colors that nobody had seen before for Western Desert artists. As most Western Desert artists mostly use ochres and earthy tones, Tommy Watson painted in bright colors. He used all the colors that he was given. You have to realize these older men and older women that had never used acrylic paint, this was completely new for them. So these were colors they had never used in their youth. So they started experimenting, and Tommy Watson made an oeuvre in the years that he painted that is completely unique. And there's a beautiful example in this exhibition. And then for the last painting in this exhibition I want to show is a painting by Warling Piringa Chapulchari, who is also a Western Desert artist, but painted in very neutral tones again. And he became very famous in the last decades, even so famous that he was on the front page of the New York Times for an exhibition in New York years ago. And the painting at the back of the room is by Warling Piringa Chapulchari. Now, what Warling Piringa painted was the Western Desert as seen from above, as everything is a bird's eye view, but this is the desert moving. This is literally the sandy desert with the ripples of the sand moving as you look at it. It's almost impossible to photograph this painting and very difficult to film, but when you see it and stand in front of it, you can feel the wind going through the desert and the ripples of the sands. And this painting was painted in 2017. So now we go to the exhibition from paintings from all of the decades, from 1970, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and the teens. And the final painting I just want to bring to your attention is a very large painting, which I'm very proud of, that we're having this exhibition. It's a 5.5 meter painting by Emily Kingwari, painted in the last year of her life. And Emily herself told people when she was painting this is my story, this is Emily's story. And from people that were with her when she painted this, she said when she was done, and she pointed to the little brown figure at the side of the painting and said, that is me, all done. And this, the rest of the painting, that is my life, all over now. Those were the words that Emily said herself. And with those words, I want to leave this exhibition and hope to see you here and come and see all these beautiful works by Emily and the whole history behind.